Tim, you have an incredible life story, and I learned about it in the most interesting of ways. I was your Lyft driver.
Yeah, that is true.
And in the Lyft car, it's so interesting because sometimes I'm surprised at the things people tell me about their lives.
Oh God, so I'm not the only one.
No, you are not the only one. I mean, people really, they divulge, and and you actually inspired this.
What?
Yeah, because listening to your story and listening to other people's story, it made me think about just humanity in totality and how we all have stories to be told. And like I said to you earlier, we live in such a celebrity, fame-centered culture, and most podcasts that you watch, it's all about a famous person, as if those are the only stories that are worth listening to. Regular, everyday people have stories that are compelling. So thank you, Tim.
Oh, well, thank you. I don't know what to say.
Oh, stop, Tim.
Except for that, I'm glad that, that you caught me now and not 3 years ago when it was like a big giant mess. Which is how I think I ended up talking to you in the first place. Was just because I'm like, it's 2.25 years into sobriety for me, and I know it's supposed to be anonymous, so I guess I shouldn't say what program I'm in or anything, but it changed my life. So I'm frequently reminded of that, and just like doing regular things like going to work, doing these things that I didn't 3 years ago think I would be doing anymore.
Because you wouldn't have guessed you'd be sitting on a podcast talking about your life.
I certainly wouldn't have imagined myself here. But I don't think I would have imagined waking up today.
Ooh.
So it was like, it was a bleak time, but it was also post-pandemic. Everything was falling apart, and I felt like my life was, and I was so isolated that I felt like I was the only person on the planet. And certainly the only person who cared about me, and that wasn't much. So getting sober and everything was like a journey in and of itself, as far as like finding my way back to caring about life. And I guess my philosophy when I get into an Uber or a Lyft is, because I drove for a while, so I know.
So you know what it's like.
Yeah, so I know the driver is either like, sometimes it's like, hey, I'm really bored, I would like to have a conversation, or I don't want to talk to anyone right now. And I'm like, it's your car, I always say hello in a way that's like, I will either keep talking or I will just shut up and
I'm such a talker.
Quiet.
I could talk to anybody about anything. I'm such a talker, but I leave it up to the person to break the ice. If Pastor, you want to talk, we can talk. If not, we don't have to.
Yeah.
And you did, so we talked.
So I talked a lot.
We talked a lot.
And unfortunately, it was a really long drive.
I don't even remember where we drove from, but it was a long drive. I remember that.
I think I was still living in a place in Hollywood, so it probably would have been,
like Santa Monica, Hollywood, or something like that.
Like
during rush hour. So it was
Hollywood, like probably over near like Western and stuff, and morning rush hour and everything, just getting to work.
So who was Tim 3 years ago?
Gosh, I don't really know. I think that was a big part of, what led me to that kind of level of despair and everything. Around 2014, my mom passed away, and that was like my last kind of living link to where I was brought up in Texas, and I didn't really have any reason to go back there after that. I have a sister, but we're not close. It's not like there's any acrimony or anything. We're just literally just not close. So I lost that connection. I lost the job that I had working for an animation company that was really, a really good job, but I had been put in a position where I was like sort of compromised, and there was an HR issue that I guess I shouldn't really like.
Compromised by the entertainment industry?
No, by my employer. And it was uncomfortable in a lot of ways that, I wasn't used to dealing with.
What was that?
It was a little bit of a sexual harassment kind of thing.
They sexually harassed you?
Yes, but in a really like low grade kind of like, I don't know how to qualify this way.
Describe low grade sexual harassment.
It was literally just a few remarks made at a public lunch in front of everyone else in our department, and it was enough to make me singularly uncomfortable. And to be honest, at that point, I was hiding my addiction from everyone. So, I didn't even know that I had a problem. But that kind of behavior, like, sort of led to me, like, not doing my job to the utmost of my abilities. So, like, there's literally cause for me not to be there anymore as well.
Aside from the
aside from this thing, which
situation.
was completely outside of my, influence. But
what was the addiction at that time?
Mostly alcohol, I would say. Like, there's also pot, but that seems so negligible.
I mean, there's lots of people who will argue that point that marijuana is non-addictive.
Yeah, and I've heard that term, like California sober or whatever.
Right.
Like people who don't drink but do smoke pot. And I'm like,
right.
Can you really be sober and high at the same time? I don't know how that works.
I guess it's because maybe there's not a psychological dependence on it, even though, I have a brother who first thing in the morning when he woke up, he had to smoke. He had to smoke in order to have an appetite to eat breakfast. He had to smoke before he went to work to have nerve enough to go to work. He had to smoke when he got home from work to come down. He had to smoke again to eat dinner, and then he had to smoke one last time to go to sleep.
Yeah, no.
If you ask me, I would say he might have had an addiction there. Just,
Yeah. I think it was easy. That was the easiest thing for me to walk away from.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also like my introductions to sobriety came after a low that wasn't necessarily like, oh my God, I was going to end up in the hospital or the morgue or anything. But it was enough of like, I'm going to lose my last connection to humanity if I don't do something. And that drove me to find, a sponsor, someone who can like walk me through what I need to do.
There's some things worse than dying. That would have been like being a walking zombie.
Yeah, and he was very clear on like what his opinion was, and since I basically put him in the driver's seat of my life for the time until I could like get my bearings, his idea was anything that affects you from the neck up, that's out. Don't do that. Which includes a lot of things that, I didn't necessarily think of, like poppers, which, is part of the gay lifestyle. And I won't go into explaining what that is for people who don't know what that is.
But in case somebody doesn't know, what is a popper, Tim?
It's, a form of an inhalant that basically relaxes your inhibitions for a brief while. It's like, it basically gives you like a really quick head high.
Right.
And a little body rush.
And it tends to make sex a little bit easier sometimes, too.
Yes, especially if you're on the receiving end.
If you're on the receiving end, it allows you to relax.
Yeah.
In a number of ways.
So it's like it's that kind of thing, but it's also very temporary, and it's even something that I don't like because it would always end up leaving me with headaches. Mm-hmm. But 6 days into sobriety, I hooked up with someone who was from Germany and had German ones, which are the real thing, because in America you get these imitation ones.
I mean, is it not paint thinner here in the United States?
I don't know what it is here, but it's not actually amyl nitrate anymore, which is what it used to be. But in Germany, the sky's the limit, I guess. So he's like, "Do you want some?" And I'm like, "Yeah." and then I told my sponsor about it. And
Sobriety,
he's like,
what?
You got to wind that back 6 days. And I was like, "Oh, 6 days."
So that means you had to start back over.
Yeah, I had to start my day count of sobriety again,
what got you there? What got you on this? I mean, I don't want to be presumptive and call it a path of destruction, but what got you on that path?
It was like after my mom passed away, I lost the job. I took a series of other jobs which were really not helpful, like really like either outside of my wheelhouse or didn't financially like keep me above board. So, I was spiraling financially and I was spiraling mentally because I wasn't, holding on to anything. Like I said, I didn't really know who I was because at that time I would define my identity by who I was with. What do they expect me to be? And I'll be that.
So you were being a chameleon, so to speak, but you had no sense of who you actually were in it all.
Exactly. I had like severe like abandonment issues from childhood, from my teenage years. And so I just took that with me into adulthood because I had never really grown up. Like my entire life, I had been sort of like taken care of by other people. I ended up in a marriage with a woman because I wasn't aware that, or I wasn't willing to admit that I was gay. That's a whole other thing, but
A whole other thing?
which we can
We're
come
definitely
back to.
gonna dive into
Yeah,
that.
we can definitely come back to that. But, I would say, like, there I was. I had a caretaker, I just married a caretaker. And I got divorced and came out, and I had been lucky enough to get some money through another weird kind of situation. And so I didn't have to take full responsibility for anything, really. I just kind of had glided through life up until that point. And when my mom passed away, I think that was like the triggering, event.
It was like you hit that wall that you couldn't go any further like that.
Yeah. And instead of just crashing, that was like a just general descent into like, let me spend myself massively into debt. Let me, just like not look for a job as long as I could not look for a job. Let me, ride on the, kindness of other people. Like I was doing all these things which were horrible. I was, borrowing money. I was not paying it back. I was lying to people about everything. I was, severely unhappy and living like this on this like weird survival mechanism of acting like a child because that had always like solved my problems.
There's a lot of men who deal with that.
Yeah. And I just didn't. And I ended up post-pandemic, by that point, I had ballooned up to like 340 something pounds.
How much do you weigh now? I'm trying to picture.
Like I think about 240 something. Like,
wow, okay.
But like I got down to 220 and then gained it back up again because I'm trying to put on muscle mass instead. Just like every other gay man in his 50s who doesn't have anything else to do.
Because in the gay community, aesthetic is everything.
Yeah.
People will ignore a terrible personality if the aesthetic is there.
Yeah.
For better or for worse.
I would say that, like, I don't know that I think I probably did generally start doing it because of, like, I wanted to improve my appearance and I wanted to, deal with that. That just fed into more anxiety because people that I had known forever started treating me differently because I looked different. And, like, I didn't know how to deal with that because I don't know how to be this person that they're seeing. Like, I've never been that person. So, like, right now I'm doing this because I like doing it. It's a good hobby. It's a place for me to be quiet in my mind and just, like, go mindlessly through, like, lifting weights and
stuff. The gym is like church.
Yes.
The reason that the gym is so full of people, to your point, I think is a lot less about how people want to look aesthetically and more so about if you didn't go to the gym, somebody would jump in front of a bus. Like we need that sometimes just for our own mental health.
Yeah, it's a routine now. And I even quit going to the big social gym. And now I go to a gym where if it's crowded, there's like 12 people there. Now,
what was the big social gym you went to, Tim?
Gold's in Hollywood.
That gym... I'm not even going to say what I want.
You can say anything. Like, it's,
Every gay man in Los Angeles goes to that gym.
Pretty much.
And
I won't lie.
That is the gym you go to when you are gay and don't want to say it yet.
I mean, you don't have to say it there.
True. It's a given. As soon as you walk in the door, everyone knows.
Yeah, I mean, and I do miss that social aspect. I miss going to the gym and like saying hi to people.
Were you okay? Did you cruise in the gym?
No.
Okay.
I'm terrible at it.
Okay.
I don't have that mechanism in place. Like I know that other people do it, and
they do.
Like my best friends, like everyone can do it, and like knows how.
You're the only one who doesn't.
I'm like I have no idea how that works. I want to, but I'm just not wired that way. It's just,
you're not missing a whole lot, I tell you.
Well,
not that I cruise, but I'm just saying.
I won't lie. I mean, I have been picked up at the gym. Like, I mean, I've like run into people and then ended up, hooking up with them later, but not there.
Now, I've had that experience, just not at Gold's. It's at Equinox, which is the same exact thing, but on a
But
different,
fancier.
it's a fancier cruise, right?
Yeah.
It's a fancier place to be
Exactly.
picked up, yeah. You said that you were married to a woman
Yes.
for how long?
5 years.
5 years. That's a long time, Tim.
I mean, I can extend it longer than that. We were engaged throughout my college years. So, like, pretty much our relationship was like 9, 10 years.
Almost a decade.
Yeah,
In that time, you obviously knew your truth.
I did. But, small town Texas in the 80s, you could literally get killed for being gay. So, in my hometown,
What town is that?
it's a tiny little town called Corsicana.
Corsicana, Texas.
Yeah.
In the 80s.
Yeah.
Knowing that you were gay, you couldn't be gay, though.
No.
Did she know? Do you think she had an idea?
When we got divorced, she said no. She had no idea. But, all our friends pretty much were not surprised. When
Now-
she told her best friend that we were getting divorced, and we were not going to discuss why until we actually had separated, because we were still like trying to like live together until she could find a place and I could move into a place. But she told her best friend, and her best friend is like, "Is Tim gay?" And she's like, "How did you know?" And she's like, "The show tunes."
The show tunes. Tim, what's your favorite show tune?
My favorite musical is probably Pacific Overtures by Stephen Sondheim, but Sweeney Todd's right up there. I'm a Sondheim person, so that's where my heart lives.
Boy, she missed the elephant in the room on that one, didn't she?
I mean, it was right there.
It was right in her face. See, the first time we talked about this, I remember thinking, there's no way she didn't know. You can't sleep. You cannot sleep in the same bed as a person day in, day out. Wake up next to them, go to bed next to them, see them in the morning at breakfast time, all day long, as much as married people see each other, and not know, something's interesting. There's no way she didn't know that.
I think it's because it was a gradual fall off. Like, I performed as much as I had to because, again, that's who I am. I'm the person who just pretends to be what you want me to be. So I was taught that at an early age, from childhood.
That was a survival mechanism.
Don't be gay. Okay, I won't act gay. What can I do to act less gay? Well, I'm not going to play sports, but I will go to church all the time, and I'll be super religious, and that'll make you think that I'm not gay.
So you knew how to play the role.
Yeah, it was just hammered into me. It didn't make me a good actor anytime I had to act, but it did. It did do that.
Were your parents together?
Yeah.
How was your mother?
And I'm adopted as well. My mom was considerably older than the rest of my friends, my contemporaries' parents. My parents were older because she had watched her siblings have children and everything. And she really wanted a child, but it took a while for them to adopt me. So I was adopted, and by that time, I think most of my cousins were at least 10 to 12 years older than me, at the very youngest. And some of them already were married and had kids
I can
and
relate to
everything.
that.
So my second cousins are pretty much, my contemporaries age-wise, which put me in this weird, nebulous space. As far as I was the little baby that was there for all the, moms who had, my aunts and everything, who their kids had already grown up. I was the last child to get pampered. So I got way over pampered.
So I asked about your mother specifically because we relate in that regard. My mother, when I was in high school, was older than one of my friends' grandmother and was almost as old as her great-grandmother. They had babies young in that family.
Yeah.
And so my first cousins, some of them were 20 years older than me. Their kids, some of them were still older than me.
Yeah.
So their kids are who I kind of grew up with.
Yeah.
And learning how to people please and how to put on a mask and put on a show just to get by, oftentimes we learn that from our moms.
I think so.
I learned that from my mom. She was rough. She was strict about how things had to be, and so I had to learn how to do a song and dance just to get by.
I don't think my mom was she wasn't really strict with me, but, I also did everything I could to make sure that I didn't rock any boats.
You never got to the point where she was strict with you because you did everything to make sure that you didn't get there.
I was a little angel.
But were you really?
I mean, I think to a really annoying degree, yes, because I would just anticipate anything. That's not to say I wasn't selfish, because I was, and I lied all the time because, I had addict behavior even as a child.
And that part, right? Like, you were an angel, but that's just the role you were playing.
Yes, exactly.
The truth was, you probably weren't. You were like any other kid.
Exactly. But I didn't act on any of my natural impulses because I was afraid of them all. Everything was telling me that I was different, being adopted, and being told that at an early age. So I wasn't, going to be surprised by my cousins going, "You're adopted." My mom didn't want me to be informed that way, so they made sure that I understood that,
because cousins would have said that.
Yeah, exactly. They were awful. But
mine were too. I understand.
Yeah, so I knew I was adopted. I knew that I wasn't part of this bloodline. I knew I had all these creative impulses that no one else in my family had. I like to draw, I like to sing, I like to read, I like to write, I like to act. I like to do all of these things. I couldn't play the piano at all, but I really wanted to.
Even if they hadn't told you that you were adopted, do you think you still would have known, just based off what you said about you had all these impulses that didn't match anybody else around you?
Yes. There's no way that I wouldn't have felt other because, I was the only little gay child.
Tim, let me tell you something. When I was 14, I found out that the person who I thought was my biological father was not. And I was told by my mom, and told, but don't say anything. But even before she told me, I always knew. You could feel it. You could see it. It was just one of those things where it's like, man, I don't look like them. I don't look like y'all. I don't do things that y'all do. I don't even move the way that you move.
It didn't even occur to me about the appearance thing. I know at some base level, but later on when I got divorced, I did finally see a picture of my biological mom, and it was crazy because there was a resemblance. I'm not saying that I looked like her, but in a page boy haircut. I'm just saying I saw this resemblance in the eyes and the nose and the face structure, and I'd never seen that in another person before. So it is really striking when you see that.
Yeah, I saw a picture of my biological father for the first time when I was 29. And I realized, I have his face. And it's jarring when you first see it because I had never seen that looking at my dad raised me since I was 1. That's my dad, right? But looking at his family, I had never seen anybody who looked like me. But when I saw a picture of my biological father for the first time, it was like, oh, that's where I get this nose. So it all made sense.
Right? You can see that.
You can see it.
I don't look like these people in these pictures. And I don't know what I should look like. I don't know what someone who is related to me looks like. But then you see it and you're like, oh, wow.
You're like, oh, wow. That's what it's like to look like somebody else other than,
And I wonder, does everyone take that for granted? Do you just assume that? Do you see your resemblance in other people's faces?
It is taken for granted. It is. Because on the one hand, I can look at my mom and I can see, oh, okay, I look like her. I could see that. But then there's parts of me that's like, well, but where did I get this from then? If I didn't get this from you, where did I get it from? And so it's strange because I'm sort of on both sides of that. I know what it's like to see the resemblance, and then I also know what it's like to not see the resemblance.
Yeah.
And to your point, I think it is taken for granted because when you know your family, or at least you think you do, in my case, I thought I did, you don't even think about what it is to feel like you look like everyone else because it's just a given.
Yeah.
It's not something you think about.
Yeah, and I don't know that... I've talked to other people who were adopted throughout my many years on this planet, And, you know, they've each found out in different ways at different times of life and everything. And they all, like, it always seems to be like, yeah, you feel like no matter how much your adopted family tells you they love you, and no matter how much you love them, because I will say, you know, my mom feels like, you know, that was my mom. Like, I saw a picture of my biological mother, but she was not my mom. My mom is my mom.
Correct.
And as much as I know that she loved me, you always feel like that little part of you that feels like, yeah, but I'm not yours.
It's so, it's gut-wrenching because it's true.
And, you know, there's also, I don't know how much of that is also my addict brain, which is always willing to tell me that, you know, I am definitely not worth loving or spending any time with.
I think that part of it might be that. The other part of it is humans naturally need to feel a sense of belonging. You need to feel like you belong to a group. And to be in a family unit and not feel like you belong is incredibly difficult because it's your family. That's the one place you should feel like you belong, but then you don't. And you're subconsciously even, because I don't even know that it's something that you're consciously thinking all the time, but just having the ability to draw on things, you're looking around and you're like, I don't have anyone to relate to on this.
Yeah, it's like, say I liked playing chess, but no one in my family knew how to play chess. So I can't play chess with anyone in my family. That is a terrible example. I'm not good at chess. I'm just using that as a metaphor.
Sure.
Because, you know, then I'll end up in the seventh seal or something. But it is true where you're just like, you have this need to be part of a community. And if you feel like you're not part of it, then every moment of your waking day is spent trying to prove yourself. Like, I belong here. And even if I'm being told, yes, you belong here and we love you.
You still don't believe it.
It's like, oh, yeah, but I could be on my ear, you know, out in the street any second now.
You can also see the way that the family treats those that are their family. You see it, and it's like, oh, I'm not treated like that. Interesting. You know, I'm not welcomed quite like that. You feel it.
Because, you know, and also, you know, hyper aware of anything that someone else is getting that I'm not getting. Why am I not getting this? And, you know, finding out or realizing at an early age that, like, there's something even more wrong with me, that I am not feeling these feelings about girls that other little boys are feeling. And this is a problem.
So now it's doubled.
Yeah. So, like, on top of that, on top of the you're adopted, you don't belong here, you're also like, you're weird. And even if you don't have a word for that, which I didn't, I knew that, like,
It was different.
Yeah, that oh, this is something else I need to hide.
It's so interesting because on the one hand, in my family, it was an open secret. Everyone knew. Everybody knew that my dad wasn't my biological dad. Everybody knew it except me. And then I was told, don't say anything. So then when I was told, I had to just proceed as if I still didn't know, even though now I'm aware that everybody knows this.
So everybody knows it, but no one's talking about it.
Everybody knows it, but nobody talked about it. It was just this thing, and my dad and my sister would talk like we were biologically related, even though now I know we're not. And it's like, oh, so now you guys are lying. Like, it's
So now we have to play this game.
Now we have to play a game. We have to do this song and this dance, and I have to look in everybody's face knowing that you are all actively lying to me. Oh, God. And I have to play along with this lie.
God, that's even more than I can think of. Yeah.
It was the strangest thing. And then on top of that, to your point, to also know that you're different in other ways. Like, oh, I'm not attracted to what you all are attracted to, or what you would expect me to be attracted to simply because I'm a boy.
Yeah. And it's assumed. And then you realize, like, oh, I can't just say that's not for me.
No, you cannot.
And even if I didn't have a word for it, as soon as I did have a word for it, all of my fears were confirmed because, then I'm being told by the church, by all of my friends. At one point, I asked my best friend, who had been my best friend for life, like, hey, if I was gay, would you still be my friend? And he just, without thinking, was no.
And it's so sad because those weren't even his own thoughts. He was just regurgitating what was given to him from the surroundings.
Exactly.
I mean, the insidious part of it is most of the attack was never direct. It was usually indirect. I mean, back at that time for you in the 80s, the 70s maybe also would have been a little bit different, but
yes, we can roll in the 70s.
by the time the 90s and the early 2000s would have come around, you might see one or two gay people on TV. And whenever you would see it on TV, the family or people around would have a remark. Oh, those gay so-and-sos. Oh, that's nasty. That's disgusting. And you're sort of sitting there like, oh, wow. I relate to the person on the TV. And now everyone is sitting around saying how disgusting and terrible that is. So then I must be too, because I relate to that.
Yeah, the first time I heard the word gay in that context was when this TV show Soap came on, which was this, like, I don't want to get into describing it, but it was like a parody of soap operas, but late night, and it was a comedy, and it was, normally or so, it was very highly thought of. It was very, like, highly rated and everything. And there was a character on it played by Billy Crystal who was gay. And so I watched an episode. I heard the word used in context and everything. And then I asked my mom what gay meant. And I was very quickly forbidden from watching soap anymore. And I didn't get an answer to my question, but I figured it out. Yeah. So, I was like, you can't watch that show anymore. So
Tim, you get engaged in college.
Yes.
So you're what, 19, 20?
Yes.
You go through this whole engagement and then you get married.
Yeah.
Do you remember your wedding day?
Yes.
What
I got married when I was 20. So
you got married when you were 20.
So I guess we dated through high school. Jeez, that's even worse.
It's okay. So you dated through high school. You got engaged in college. You got married when you were 20.
That 9-year number, but it's because I'm terrible at math. So
it was even longer than 9 years.
I don't think so, because I got divorced when I was 25.
Okay, so all right.
I was married 5 years. It feels like we dated 4 years, but I guess, oh yeah, that would have been right because I don't know. But yes, go ahead with your question.
You get married on your wedding day. I would imagine there is no way there wasn't a voice in you screaming that this is not the right thing to do.
Oh, yeah. In fact, on the way to the church, driving to the church, a black cat ran across the road right in front of my car.
An omen.
Yes. I mean, if you want to think about it that way, it was like, maybe God was trying to tell me something, but I was having none of that. And I just went through with it. The only thing I can remember is about my wedding is that I sang a song because I thought that would be a really great thing to do during a wedding. You don't have enough to do pretending to be this person, but
pretending to be this groom who's in love with this woman bride.
Let me sing an Andrew Lloyd Webber song. And I went up on the words, and that I remember, but I don't remember anything else. The cake was good.
Tim, I can't believe this woman did not know that you were gay. I'm just saying.
It was all there.
I can't believe it. You sang an Andrew Lloyd Webber tune at the wedding?
Yes. The unexpected song. So, how much more on the nose could I get?
You may as well have sang the Dream Girl soundtrack at that point.
Oh, God. I'm telling you, I'm not going at the wedding.
Exactly. So, you are now married to this woman.
Yes.
You know you are gay. You know this. You may be fighting it, but you know it.
Yes. The only outward signs of that were that I was holding on to the Undergear catalogs a really long time.
What is an Undergear catalog?
Oh, my God. there's this store called International Male that used to be in West Hollywood. They had like trashy, sexy clothes
For men.
for men.
And they were using male models, obviously.
Yes, where, unlike Sears, you could see the bulge and everything. So,
Really? And you would hold on to the catalogs just a tad bit too long.
They had a side spin-off of Undergear, which was nothing but underwear. So,
And you sneak off to the bathroom with the with the things and
No, she went to work early, so I just had the couch to myself.
so
It's me and these catalogs.
look.
And muscle and fitness magazines that I had for art reference.
She bought that story, art reference.
Oh, she didn't know I had those. I kept them hidden.
Oh, but that's what you told yourself.
Yes.
That was a lie you told
and
yourself.
every person at the store when I bought it, this is for art reference.
Yeah, okay. Half naked men and half naked men is for art reference. Got
Not
it.
entirely naked.
You were a sculptor, maybe. Like this guy.
No, well, no. I drew a lot.
Okay, so
Because I
then
did
there it
have
was.
aspirations of being an animator. So, I could legitimately write that off in my brain as something I needed.
The lies we tell ourselves when we're living something that's not our truth, the stories we come up with to make it livable, because you had to make that livable for yourself.
Oh, yeah.
You went to bed with this woman every night. Now, look, I'm an actor, right? And I like to think I'm a pretty good one. You had to be an excellent actor to act what it is to have sex with a person.
Yes. I mean, and
A woman.
yeah, and it was not a one-time thing. It was something we did like for, obviously less and less and less as time went on.
Yeah.
But I think by the end it had been like nearly a year. But when called on to perform, I could rise to the occasion because I had to.
When called on to perform, having to rise to the occasion, no pun intended.
Oh, yeah, no, I intended that pun.
You intended that pun? Pun definitely intended. You weren't thinking about her when you were doing it. There's no way, because you weren't attracted to women.
No, but I did. I was able to do it because I was making her happy. And that is the only way I knew to make myself happy was to make sure everybody else around me was happy.
So
The big lie there is that, that's how I lived my life up to that point. I can't be happy unless everyone else is happy. But I was supremely unhappy the entire time.
that disease to please was so strong that it even translated sexually, Tim.
Yeah.
As long as you made everyone else happy, even sexually, you were able to sustain.
Yes.
Not be happy, but at least sustain.
Yeah, I could hold on. I could survive one more day.
Tim, when you would be done engaging with your wife at that time, there's no way. Look, I'm trying to really put myself in that space. There is no way when you roll over, you didn't think, this is so fucked up.
I don't think I did, but as hard as it is for you to put yourself in that space, I can't put myself in that space. I have, come to terms with a lot of things over the past couple of years, and just learning how to be honest with myself, and even to say this all out loud, is something I would not have been able to do to this extent. I always considered myself an open book, but that's when I didn't even realize that half the book I wasn't reading because I was lying to myself. That as much as I would be able to convince other people of everything, I was doing a double job on myself just because, just to survive, to not see myself and see the monstrous things that sometimes I would do just to get by. I would lie to myself.
I have always said that nice is a mask, and people who are nice are just pretending. Nice people are just faking it, because more often than not, it's just a means to appease other people. And deep down, a nice person is not actually nice at all. And the reason for that is because they're not being nice to themselves.
I wouldn't say that it's 100% that, but I think that nice is a good mask. But there's definitely a difference between me feeling like I'm doing something to cover up my insecurities or my failings or my perceived inadequacies, as opposed to me doing something like, I don't even want to like give any examples, but just saying that like things that I do now for people, I do because it makes them feel good. And not because I need to have them feel good. It's just because, I can help another person. I can, whatever I can do, which isn't much. Like I'm not, a philanthropist or anything like that. But, if I can help someone out with a meal, if they're struggling and, they want to have lunch or whatever, like, I'll do that. And I think the big difference is that before I would have thought, I'm doing this so you'll think better of me. I'm getting something back. And now, I don't need that.
Well, if it makes you feel any better at all, Tim, you're helping people now.
I hope so.
Sharing the story, because it's twofold. Watching this, there are women watching this right now who are in your ex-wife's shoes.
Oh, look for the show tunes.
Look for the show tunes, ladies. And
now you have to check digitally because no one has physical media.
And there are men who are in the shoes that you were in at that time, watching this. Now, are any of them going to jump down in the comments and raise their hand and volunteer it? Probably not, but there are.
Well, I mean, it's, coming out and like, finally like being able to address these things is like something everyone has to do in their own time, because I would say, yeah, you could have forced me out in high school. But at the time, AIDS was prevalent. There were lots of other mitigating factors. Maybe I needed that survival technique. I needed to like hide. I needed to protect myself.
Because if you hadn't, then
it could have been a life or
would
death.
have been different.
Yeah. But that's not to say that my ex-wife deserved to go through what she went through, because that's unfair as well. But
the truth is, you both were damaged.
Yeah.
Is the real truth, because like we're discussing, she had, just like you had to act and perform and pretend, she had to do the same thing.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say as well, like, she had difficulties in her upbringing as well. So it made us a perfect match with our, like, coordinated traumas.
She wanted to be loved, and you wanted to please everybody, and it worked at the time.
Yes, I would say that. That's fair. It was a system that worked until it didn't, which is like what you can say about addiction. Like, when I spiraled into really heavy using, it was like, it was a solution.
Post-divorce.
Yeah. Like this is like post-pandemic and everything, even like after I lost the weight and I couldn't deal with the way people were treating me. Like I had never considered myself a sexual object before. I'm being treated like one. I did not know how to respond to that. I'm not saying that I'm God's gift or anything. I'm just saying it was like a different, people were approaching me differently and seeing me differently than I saw myself. And yeah.
What do you think the disconnect was between how you saw yourself and how other people saw you?
I mean, until I got sober, I was still relying on those same defense mechanisms of like being a child, like, I would cry if put into a situation. Like, that's not attractive for a 50-year-old guy to be crying. Like, who wants that? Who wants to deal with that? I had no idea how a successful relationship worked because, I hadn't ever actually been in one besides my marriage. And I would hardly call that like a model to base anything on. So, it was just like relying on all these old, unsuccessful modes of dealing with problems. And that made it easier to turn to, substances, like anything I could get my hands on.
Because by that point now it's just escapism.
Yeah. Now it's just self-medicating. Like I wasn't suicidal, but I was, I would be okay if I hadn't, there were days where I was like, if I don't wake up tomorrow, that's okay.
That's okay. So you divorced after 5 years.
Yes.
The last year of your marriage, you didn't have sex.
Pretty much.
What was the conversation between you and her that last year?
It all boiled down to really one conversation. We were looking for a new apartment because the place we were at was going to raise the rent. And at one point she just slammed on the brakes. She's like, look, I don't know what's going on, but either you tell me or I'm leaving. And that was pretty much her putting the foot down. And
literally.
yeah. And so I realized very quickly, I did the math in my head. I'm like, she's out the door. She's literally going to leave. And I knew when she said it that she meant it. So I said, well, I think I might be gay. At that point, I had never had any gay experience beyond the magazines with another person. Like, I'd never had a physical interaction with a man that way. Mm-hmm. So it was all like speculation. I could have been horribly wrong.
I mean, now, Tim, if you were
it was
you were
highly
choking
doubtful.
the chicken to those magazines. I don't think there was speculation at that point.
It was all theoretical.
Sure.
Everything was all just on the drawing board. I hadn't taken anything out to try to fly it.
Sure. We hadn't pressed bodies against one another, but yes. So you came out in the car. You told her.
I said I might be. And then that set up a round of therapy sessions where I found a really good therapist in Dallas. And, he would walk me through the different scenarios like, oh, yeah, you could say you're gay and then you would have to change your entire life and everything would change and everything would be different. And you would have to deal with all the pain that other people are feeling and everything. And I was like, oh my God, he wants me to stay closeted.
It's literally a whole new identity at that point.
But then the next week he'd be like, or you can stay married and you'd be forever wondering if you'd given up this part of your life. And
obviously he's telling you this separately from sitting with your wife.
Yeah, he was giving me both sides of everything. Mm-hmm. And finally he just was like, look, you don't need me to tell you how to live your life. Mm-hmm. You've got plenty of people in your life who are going to do that for free. He's like, I want you to step back and take a real look. And I think that might have been like one of the biggest decisions that I had made in my life was just saying, okay, yes, I have to do this.
And then you both walked away from the marriage.
Yes.
What was your life then at that point post the marriage? Because now this big secret that you've been holding and not wanting to confront, you've now had to face it.
Yes. It was, again, like everything else in my life, it was a decision that was made super painless for me, more painless than it should have been. Like I'm not saying I should have suffered or anything, but I guess I'm saying that at that point I was financially independent. It didn't hurt me to get divorced. It didn't cost me anything financially. I didn't lose any friends because all my friends already knew. They were just waiting for me to come around the corner and say, hey, guess what?
And sing some more show tunes.
Yeah. So, yeah, and no one was to tell me that I couldn't because, like, I was at this place of where, my arrested development could just stay arrested. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And there were really no consequences. I started going out to, gay clubs and everything. It was still months before I even kissed a guy, but yeah, it was relatively painless.
So there was no addiction at that point?
It was there. I never really tapped into it. Mm-hmm. There was always something that would keep me from it. Mm-hmm. Like there was enough of life to distract me from it. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have to use it as a solution. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I would say that it has always been there, but I've always been driven by fear too, which kind of counteracts it in a weird way. Mm-hmm.
The fear of becoming an addict kept you from becoming an addict.
Yeah, the fear of I never got drunk during high school because it was like, if I did, I might say or do something that would give me away. I might do something gay.
Strangely enough, I know exactly what you mean.
And I guess, despite coming out, despite having therapy, despite getting divorced, all of that stuff, I was still carrying around this fear, this internalized homophobia forever. It didn't go away.
So it was self-hate?
Yeah. Oh, completely. Mm-hmm. It's a thing that I thought about when you said, how we're all looking for our tribe, our group that we need to belong to. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the things they tell you in sobriety is find your tribe, find find the people that you connect with so you can, have a support system in place, which is great. But, I spent the first months of sobriety feeling terribly isolated and alone and trying to force myself to be friends with people, that I would meet because I had no social skills to deal with that. And I had no self-love at all. And, eventually, things come around, you mature, you grow, you learn, you end up talking to people who you do connect with, and then you do form friendships and you do build relationships. But it seemed to me the most important thing I learned from that was you can't build a tribe for yourself until you put yourself in that tribe, until you make yourself a member of it. You love yourself enough to be your own best friend. And that's a really hard thing to learn when you've spent your entire life not believing that.
That love is always within you.
Yeah.
And most of us think that it's outside somewhere.
Yeah.
We're running around looking for something that only we have.
You can't be in a club unless you are a member of it.
Right.
Like, you got to bring yourself in there.
You can't be in the club unless you're in the club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, it was one of those things that, I'm still learning. I'm still working on that. I go through days where, it's like I told a friend recently that it's like, I feel like everything, like my addict brain always tells me you deserve everything you get, whether it's good or bad. Like if it's bad stuff, you totally had that coming. If it's a good thing, you totally need that. You earned that. Like, I'm the biggest piece of shit and the biggest, and the best person in the room at the same time.
Is that addict brain, or is that simply just a part of the human condition?
I think it's a little of both. I think it's exaggerated in my case because it will, if unchecked, or if I don't have the tools that I have to deal with that, if I let myself sit in self-pity for very long, it will just exponentially grow. And, I realized too that part of my addiction was also being addicted to that feeling of self-pity. Oh, if I got people feeling sorry for me, it's like, it's not enough for me to be miserable. I want you to be miserable.
So it was like being
me.
addicted to your own story.
Yeah.
And I asked
But
the
it's
question.
a lie. That story's a lie.
It's a big lie. You're being addicted to a lie at that point.
Yeah.
I asked the question about, is it addict brain or is it just simply a part of the human condition? Because earlier when you talked about when you went to the therapist with your wife, and the therapist said, well, if you say you're gay, everything's going to change. You're going to have to get around new people because it would be a whole new identity, which you have now learned he was correct about that. It's a new identity.
Yeah.
To say or to think that it's addict brain, that's an identity. That's identifying with something, right?
I think it's just me being aware that there's a certain kind of thinking that will cross my brain. There are thoughts that go across my brain that are not mine, or that are driven by a need to run me down. And I think that, in general, I tend to be, or I used to be, really self-deprecating. I would put myself down before anyone else could. And I think that is driven by that impulse.
Almost like you were anticipating it.
It's like setting myself up to drink or use. It's like, these are the reasons why. Like, my brain is always going to try to give me reasons why I need to go have a drink, or I need to go, find some drugs.
What was your drug of choice, too?
It started out mostly alcohol. Then it gradually became like ketamine and cocaine were like the big ones. I didn't really get to crystal meth, but it was right around the corner.
Being a part of the community, yeah, I could see that.
It was there. If I had not gotten help when I did, it was right there because it was definitely in my environment.
Was it the space after the pandemic, feeling totally isolated, that made you go, okay, it's time for me to get this thing together?
It was a series of really codependent relationships. There were a couple of codependent relationships that I wound up in, which were both polyamorous, and that was a situation I'd never had any firsthand experience with. I would say I was desperate to be in them because I was so starved for any kind of attention.
Mm.
Now I'm trying to think. Like, was it that I was starved for attention, or was it that I was starved for?
You lacked love for yourself.
Yeah, I didn't have that, but I think it was more than just wanting love. I think it was also just trying to fill this void that was in me that I didn't really have a word for.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really know that everything that I was doing was all just surface stuff. Mm-hmm. There was nothing meaningful happening in my life. It was all just get from here to here, watch this movie, read this book, whatever. I'm not internalizing anything, not growing, not learning really. And, any kind of physical stimulation that came up or stimuli that came up, I would just grab hold of that and try to use that to fill that void.
Have you today gotten a better understanding of what that void was?
Yes.
Or is?
Yeah. And it was the thing I was most afraid of getting into sobriety, which was spirituality. I had no spiritual life whatsoever due to like a really bad experience in the Southern Baptist Church when I was a kid.
What was that really bad experience?
Do you want me? It's a long story. Okay. It had to do with being gay, and the Southern Baptist Church is very much like, it's frowned upon. So, like I said, defining my identity was just throwing myself into the church and doing everything that I could do, to be a little Christian boy.
Isn't it the strangest thing that religion, which is supposed to be this soft landing place, it's supposed to be this place that you come to for salvation, but oftentimes for many people, it ends up being a place that you come to for condemnation?
I think, I will say that there were really good people in that church. That like the minister of the church was really, I never got the feeling of hate or any kind of, he never preached a message of like hellfire, damnation, anything. It was just that general fear of or general knowledge that homosexuality is a bad thing. Mm-hmm. And during my time, I was a teenager and I was in the church. So I developed a big crush on this guy in the youth group, and I was in love, and all the teenage raging hormones that went with it, obsessed, and because we were in this spiritual environment, we could have conversations about that, and we would talk on the phone for hours every night, and I would just be there salivating on the other end of the line,
So that was almost like a good buffer to be able to connect with this guy.
Yeah, so I built this relationship in my head, and which I knew was a fantasy, but it all was becoming so much that I went to talk to the youth minister about it because I knew it was at a point where I could not hide this any longer. I didn't know what to do. And he was, supposed to be my spiritual advisor. So I went to him and he said, well, you're going to go to hell, so we better get you some help. He gave me this little pamphlet.
Condemnation.
Yeah. And so he gave me this little pamphlet that said, I'm gay, okay? I'm gay, ... okay? And he's like, it was I think it was a thing about, conversion therapy. And there's a camp we can send you to. And I was like, yes, let's go. I was all for that. If we can take this feeling of otherness away, then yes.
At that point, whatever. It wouldn't even matter.
As a
They
teenager,
can take it away, fine.
Take away this pain that I can't deal with. The pamphlet had a picture of two guys holding hands. It was just two men's hands, like in my mind. And I found it recently. There's nothing. It's just two hands. But in my mind, when I remember it, it's like two guys holding hands, and they're both wearing tight jeans, and they're walking away. So I'm like, of course, I love that my brain embellished it that way.
Raging stallions on the cover of
yeah,
this brochure.
but just from the, only from the waist down to the back of the knee.
Did you go to conversion therapy?
I was going to, but a woman in the youth group who worked with the youth group told a bunch of girls that I had told him. He obviously told her. She told a bunch of girls, and then the whole youth group found out, and everyone turned their back on me. So like 2/3 of my social situation disappeared.
That's what I'm talking about. The place that is supposed to be a space for salvation ends up becoming a place of condemnation. And now I know some people are going to look at this and might even be of the mind that, condemnation might be necessary for salvation. And that could be an argument too. I could see that coming. But it's like...
Well, that's where my deep-rooted like fear of abandonment comes from, because I lost that whole group. What strikes me now?
Yourself.
What strikes me funny now is that I was primed for my reaction to that to be like maybe suicide. Like that seems like, oh, if I'm looking back at that version of me, that version of me would have been like, I'll show you guys. I'll just, duck out of the picture. But for some reason, my reaction was anger. And I hardly ever lose my temper, but I was furious. And my reaction was, fuck all of you. I am going to like show you're wrong. So I ended up dating this girl. But, that
sure showed them, Tim.
Yeah, but I survived. I survived that situation, which, now I look at as a miracle. Like there's a reason why I did not need to go then. And that leads me, back to the whole like thing with spirituality. Why, that is why I was terrified of it. I rejected God at that point because I felt like he was implicitly involved with that whole incident. Like, but it kept me from going to conversion therapy. It kept me alive. And, getting into sobriety, one of the first things I told my sponsor was, I'm going to have a problem with all this God stuff because it's like it's all there.
I had a problem with God for a long time when I was young. I was angry because I thought, well, why make me this way if you're going to send me to hell for it? Because it's not something contrary to what a lot of people believe. People are like, yeah, it's a choice. If it was a choice, what fool would choose just an implicitly more difficult path that is just not the nature of human beings?
Exactly.
We take the path of least resistance. No one would choose it if it were a conscious choice. If it took a long time. It took a long, long time. And I think that for you, the way that your story happened at the time, it's almost as if you had to go down the exact path that you went down to be right here where you are today.
It's what gets me through every day, literally, is thinking, I've had so much and I've lost so much. But where I'm at right now, I have the best friends in my life that I've ever had. Like, I never thought I would have someone in my life that I would, just like die for if I had to, that I would just go to the mat for. And I've got at least 2 people in my life that are like that right now. And, I don't have this like love relationship that I would have thought that I wanted, but like right now I don't need that. But I think, the most important thing is that I have a relationship with, I don't know, I don't call it God, but it's a very personal thing to me, my higher power, this something that's greater than myself, that's outside of myself, that I believe in, I don't know how it works. I don't know exactly how to define it. I feel like as much as it is outside of myself, it's also like the very best part of me that's inside of myself that I can touch and I can talk to, and that gives me what I need to get through the day. And that, when I look back at it, has been there even when I wasn't aware of it.
Even when you weren't aware of it.
Yeah.
Just like gravity works, whether or not we're aware of it, whether or not we believe in it, doesn't matter. If you jump off the roof, the same thing is going to happen to you that's going to happen to anybody who jumps off the roof.
Doesn't matter how much drugs you're on, you're still going to go straight to the ground.
Exactly. At the same speed as everyone else.
Exactly.
Yes. That's so beautiful, Tim.
Well, it's definitely things that I've learned from the people around me. Just the pure, unadulterated luck of coming in when I did, realizing that, I could have tried to get sober when I was younger, but I wouldn't have these people in my life now. I wouldn't have the experiences that I have now. Being able to go and, help out with events and things that are happening, and being able to like pitch in when someone needs help moving, or someone's having a really hard day, and, I can be there on the phone and like listen to what they're going through and genuinely, listen and not be sitting there thinking, how is this affecting me?
And in thinking, how is it when you used to think, how is this affecting you? On the back end of that, it's probably,
what can I get out of this? Yeah. And, I just don't think that way. It occurred to me recently, I wrote down this whole story of, the whole thing with the youth group and all of that. And it occurred to me after I read it back that I didn't spare any of the details. It was the first time I'd really dug into it and gotten specific with what's going on and how I was feeling and all of that. And there was not a bit of it that was self-pity. There was nothing in there of me running myself down, which is not how I told that story before I got sober.
how far are you? How long have you been sober at this point?
And now it's 2.25 years.
2.25 years.
Yeah, my sober date is August 19th, 2022.
August 19th, 2022.
Yeah,
Would have been August 13th.
it would have. Thanks, Poppers. But you know what? It works better because now I have a sober birthday that's the same as one of my friend's actual birthdays. So it's kind of like...
There's much to celebrate on that day.
Yeah, it's a special day.
So do you, for anyone else who might be watching or listening who is going on a journey to sobriety, what's the biggest piece of advice you would give them?
You know, if you're an addict and if you are really, you have to want to be sober. I would say, I mean, it's good to go to meetings. It's good to put yourself in the environment of being around other sober people. But, you know, it's going to help you more if that's what you really want. If you're really done with all of it. But I'm not saying don't go if you're not, because you're going to hear people's stories. Go until you hear someone say something that you're like, oh my God, that's me. This is what I'm feeling, because you will eventually.
And then you'll realize you're not alone.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that we all think when we're going in there. It's like, no one's suffered like I've suffered. No one's going through what I'm going through.
I'm the biggest sufferer.
Exactly. We're all terminally unique. And that is just not the case. There's always someone who's gone through what you've gone through.
As unique an individual as we all are, because in truth, Tim, you have never existed ever before and will never exist again beyond your lifetime.
I'm it.
You're it, right? As unique and phenomenal an individual as we are, there is a common thread that just goes through all of our lives and holds us all together. It doesn't matter where you come from, how much money you have or don't have, what your parents did or didn't do, gave you or didn't give you. Everyone suffers highs and lows, loss, grief, happiness, joy. Those are just universal human emotions.
Yeah, I mean, we're all in this boat together. Whether you're sober, whether you're not sober, whether you're gay or straight,
Or black or white.
Anything. Like, we are all on this planet, which is a fragile, fragile thing.
A rock floating in an infinite vacuum.
But the beautiful thing about that is, like, you know, there are people here that we don't like, or that we won't ever like, or that, you know, are going to be causing problems forever. But that doesn't keep us from trying to do the best we can to, you know, be there for the people who need us. Because in the end of the day, the best thing that we can do for ourselves is to, you know, just be there and just be open to, you know, other people's needs, what other people want. I don't know. That sounds a little hippy dippy, but I mean,
Ain't nothing wrong with hippy dippy. Ain't nothing wrong with hippy dippy.
It's obviously I'm looking out for myself as well. I'm not a doormat for anyone, and I'm not saying that I'm not living my life now to make other people happy.
Tim, I'm gonna ask you this because this is a term that I think these days gets thrown around quite a bit. Would you say that you were a narcissist?
No. I mean, I wouldn't say that. Even if I
No
was a
narcissist would say that, Tim.
Even if I was a narcissist, I wouldn't say that. I don't think so. No, I think I am the most likely to not be a narcissist. I don't think, but of course, I'm spending my days examining my behavior. I just, everything that I do, I question just because I don't want to fall back into the patterns that led me to where I was. Like it's, I do my best to get through the day without causing harm to anyone. And that includes me. Because if anyone's going to cause harm to me, I'm going to be the first in line. And
you're the only person with as much access to you.
Oh yeah.
As you have.
I know where it hurts, but it's I know all my weak spots. But I would say no, I am not a narcissist. I don't. It's a scary question for me because you're asking me, and my brain is like, yeah, you are.
Oh,
deep down, my brain is going, think of all the reasons why you are.
That part of your brain's like, but yes, you are.
Yeah, you're just like handing gasoline to that little kid who likes to throw matches in.
No, I didn't mean to say that. I meant, Tim, you are not a narcissist at all whatsoever.
No, it's totally fine. I think, it's good to question ourselves.
Yes.
Like, am I this person? It was the question that I asked most when I got sober was, am I a good person? And I would literally ask that of people. Like, am I?
Was there something that made you think that you weren't?
Oh, yeah.
Other than that part of your brain?
Everything that I had done up to that point in my life. It's
well, okay, because part of it is having been married to the lady, knowing that you were gay. That some folk gonna see that and be like, you're a terrible person for that. Was that a part of what you were questioning about yourself?
I mean, of course, I'm always going to live with that. I don't think that makes me a terrible person. I think what that makes me is a survivor. And I'm not saying that it was a good thing to do at the expense of someone else's happiness, but I am also the only person besides her that was in that relationship for 5 years.
Right.
So we are the only ones who know what went on. And there was a lot of joy, and there was a lot of love, and there was a lot of friendship. Like, I think we were there for each other as best friends at a time when we both needed that friendship. I think that, yes, the sexual quotient wasn't right. That was not good. And I was fundamentally lying on that level.
And that's one component, though.
But that's only one part of it. The other part of it is that we nurtured each other. We supported each other's creative endeavors. We supported each other's jobs. We supported each other financially.
She basically married her gay best friend.
Yeah. I mean, and it is not the first nor the last time in history where that's happened.
It is not, and it shall not be.
The street out there is paved with stars of names of people who have done exactly the same thing.
That is correct. We could throw a rock and it'll land on one of those names.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm not going to say anything. But
no, I think it makes you human, right?
Yes.
And it's like we said earlier. Both of you were in it.
Yes. And I don't think it's one of those things like, oh, how can you sleep at night?
Right.
Knowing that you did this. When not only is it something that, like I explained, it's a really complex thing that happened, it's also been litigated through the courts. And we've also
it has been, hasn't it?
That
is divorce court.
We have come to both a financial and a personal arrangement of how it dissolved. So, and it's nobody else's fucking business, really. But I'm saying that as it was the thing that happened. It's not the first or last time it's ever going to happen in history. It's the first and last time I'm going to do it.
It's just I think it's a fascinating story of just humanity, right? Because there's all these layers and all of these reasons why things happen the way that they do, and it's both people on their own journeys coming together. Even if it was 5 years or 9 years, whatever you learned, and then on the surface it looks like what we've described it as, right?
Yeah.
But beneath that, there's real stuff happening in there.
Yes, it was a relationship.
Right.
It was a real relationship.
Right.
I mean, on the psychological end of it, I could say, how could I have been fully honest with her when I wasn't able to be fully honest with myself? But that's neither here nor there. It's an experience that we both grew from. And, as an addendum to that, I will add that, it's not like her life was over.
Right.
In fact, she was married before I kissed a guy for the first time. So, let's just put that in perspective.
Oh, okay.
She was married.
She moved on.
And she has kids, and she's got her own full life right now, and she's fantastically happy.
Are you still in touch?
No, we kind of fell out of touch. But we stayed in touch for a few years. But it's like any relationship, you grow apart. It's just, I was on the other end of the country. I'm like, I don't go to Texas. I don't see or talk to any of those people anymore. It's just, it wasn't even a matter of like, I'm cutting you out of my life. It's just, we don't talk.
Life just goes on.
Yeah. And life in LA is such a river. It's like if someone moves to the other side of town, you may not ever see them again.
If someone moves to Culver City, you might not ever see them again.
Exactly.
No matter where you live in LA, Culver City is that place that's always just too far.
It's true.
No matter where you live, Culver City is always just too far.
Yeah.
LA is also weird because not only it's a collection of neighborhoods that they put together and call a city, but then life here is so its own thing that if you leave whatever town you came from and you come here, you move on and you start forgetting pretty quickly because life here is just...
It demands too much of your attention to have I have to focus on what's going on there.
Correct.
It's a big job.
I've forgotten my dad's birthday a couple times and he's not happy about it. But it's like, Dad, the weather looks the same on October 29th as it does June 1st.
I'm used to the leaves turning color.
It doesn't. Tim, you low-key did a little bit of a plug earlier. You mentioned things I learned and something you said earlier. I don't know if you realized you did that or not.
Oh.
But the name of this podcast is Things I've Learned.
It's a lovely name. I like that.
Thank you. Yes, Things I've Learned, the podcast with Steve Owens. What is something that you've learned?
I'm going to start quoting a song. I think the biggest thing that I've learned, and it's a lesson I still am teaching myself, like I said, it's that I need to love myself. I need to be able to look at myself in the mirror and say, I am enough. Mm-hmm. I am worth loving. Mm-hmm. And that's a lesson I learn every day. It's really difficult for me because it's not how I lived my life. And, I don't know if it's ever going to be instinctual. I don't know if it's ever going to just be I'm going to wake up and be like, hey, I'm great. But not in a narcissistic way. But
that was just a question to you.
But I think, yeah, that's the biggest thing is if I can love myself, then I can love everybody. Mm-hmm. Because there's no one in my mind that is harder to love than I am. Mm-hmm. And once I accomplish that, then I'm set, because I can face the world and I can face, my friends and other people and their problems and not be thinking, how can I get something out of it? Not be in it for myself. Because the biggest thing I can do for myself is just to, accept me and love me.
We love you, Tim.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
Of course. Thank you for sharing your story with the random Lyft driver.
Oh, and now I'm here talking.
And now we're here.
Talking in a microphone.
Look, Lyft driver no more. Look at us.
Yeah, this is great. Congratulations on all of this.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming, Tim. And you got to come back and update us on your journey.
Of course. Any questions you have, like, I will answer.
Before we go, is there anything else you want to say? Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I mean, I brought up the higher power thing, so like that's super important. So like, I don't want to like leave him out.
I mean, what we could never ever come up with enough words to describe the higher power.
No, and again, like, I think I was able to embrace it once I realized it was highly personal, and the program that I'm in gives you the mandate of, because there's a lot of damaged people who have been damaged by organized religion. And so I'm not going to say anything bad about it. Like, everything works, whatever works for you is what you need. And they give us the mandate to like find a power of our own understanding. And so you get to define that. And I don't think that that's building your own God. What I think it is that assigning different, like finding the aspects of God that you want most to embrace and seeing those first. And then whatever that is to you, that's how you build your spiritual life.
Versus letting someone else dictate to you what God is.
Yes.
Dictate to you what this higher source is.
Because when you come in, you're damaged. You're very, very damaged. And what you need is, like what I needed was, someone who would love me no matter what I did, and who would always, be there for me.
You can't find that in a single person.
I mean, it's really tough, but it exists. I've seen it, but when you feel like you're the only person in the world, you need to believe in something that's bigger than you, that can hold you, that can really like tell you everything is going to be okay when you can't tell yourself that. The trick is, or the truth is, you really are telling yourself you're going to be okay.
Right. Because at the end of the day, it's all us.
Yeah.
So as a man thinketh, so is he.
Yeah.
That's
It's
beautiful.
Like, it's like inside you as much as it is part of everything else.
That has saved you.
It really has.
See, that's the salvation.
Yeah.
That is the salvation that all those years ago you were looking for.
Yeah. It's like, if time doesn't mean anything to, a spiritual being, then this force, this guiding spirit that like I am talking to, or that I feel like is connected to me, was there. That same spirit was there when I was going through all the things that I went through as a child. That has been there. Like, doesn't see me as like one person right now. Sees me as this whole extension.
As all iterations.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like if we were to make, I don't know, our lives a line. If you looking at it from back here, it's a line, but if you zoom in on it, it would really just be a series of dots, moment by moment by moment by moment. All those moments cumulative make a person's life, and God is with you every single one, every step of that way.
Yeah. And I can see, I could see that when I'm speaking, sometimes I'll be like, this version of me or that version of me, this version of me that was in high school that was really damaged. I need to like love that person. I need to like find love for the child version of me that had to like, person. But it's all me. And the truth is, the most important version is this version right here. Not the version that just happened, but the version that's like living right now, because I can't do anything about those other Tims going back through time.
You can't even do anything about the Tim that you were this morning.
No, I can't do anything about that. And I can't do anything about the Tim that I'm going to be tomorrow morning when I wake up.
Because we have no idea what the rest of the day is going to bring.
Yeah. I can only be happy that I'm here right now. And I can only, be of use to anyone as I am right now. I can only worry about what is happening right now.
That's the beauty, the power of now.
And just not feeling like I'm the only person going through it.
You're not, Tim. You're not. There's people watching this. whose story you have lived. There's people who are going to watch this who, you know, that song, the Fuji song, Killing Me Softly?
Yeah.
Really, it was Roberta Flack,
Yeah, I
but
was gonna say,
it was Roberta Flack, but we're used to
I
the
have
Fuji
the old
version.
A&M single, so.
Strumming my pain with his fingers, singing my life with his words. There's people watching this who are actively living everything that we're talking about.
And we're doing the same. There are people out there who are living what we're going to live tomorrow.
Exactly. There's people who are living something that we're not going to live for 6 more years. We are all one thing. We are all one thing. There's no difference. There's no separation actually between you and I. It feels like it. It seems like it because especially just looking at us, you're a white guy, I'm a black guy. We look so different, but we're really the exact same thing.
Yeah. But at the same time, completely different.
At the same time. We're
That's
just a
the
different
paradox.
manifestation of the Almighty.
Or however you want to define that.
However you want to define it. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you so much, Steve. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Oh, come here. Thank you, Tim, with my one shoe on.